Hello, my name is Navia, and I'm here to conduct my favorite brain part presentation, which is the hypothalamus. So, exactly what is the hypothalamus? It is a part of the limbic system. It's an organ that links the endocrine system and the nervous system and regulates a variety of processes in our body, like temperature, sleep, and hunger, in order to keep our bodies balanced and stable. This balanced state is called homeostasis. So, the hypothalamus also makes and stores some really important hormones, and it also helps release those hormones. And by doing so, it is better able to maintain that balanced state in our bodies. It is shaped like an almond, which I think is really funny. And it rests deep inside of our brains, sort of in the center. If you look at the picture, it is the sky blue colored organ right below the thalamic nuclei. So, as I mentioned, its functions are geared towards keeping our bodies stable. It regulates our body temperature, helps us realize when we're hungry or thirsty or full, and it aids our sleep cycle and plays a major role in arousal and mood. And as we talked about earlier, it produces hormones, mainly two. The first being dopamine, which is the feel-good hormone that regulates motivation and reward and pleasure. The second is somatostatin, which prevents the secretion of other hormones like insulin, thyroid stimulating hormone, and the growth hormone. Isn't it fitting that the hypothalamus produces it? The hypothalamus works very closely with the pituitary gland, so it's important that we talk about that a little. The pituitary gland sits right below the hypothalamus, and it has two lobes, the anterior lobe and the posterior lobe. By proximity, the hypothalamus is connected to the anterior lobe. The pituitary stalk acts like a bridge that connects the hypothalamus to the posterior lobe, which we will talk about in a second. The pituitary gland, also dealing with hormones, receives signals from the hypothalamus about secreting hormones. So, the posterior lobe acts like a storage buddy to the hypothalamus because it stores two of the hormones that the hypothalamus produces. The first being oxytocin, which is colloquially known as a love hormone, since it plays a huge role in human bonding, connection, and trust. It also helps with the birthing process, notably in lactation and arousal, all the while also playing a role in our sleep cycle. The second hormone the posterior lobe stores is vasopressin. It's also called ADH. Vasopressin regulates our blood pressure and water volume, so thirst and secretion. As someone with ADHD, I am very interested in the parts of the brain that are wired a tad bit differently, and so I love to talk about dysfunctions. The effects of hypothalamic dysfunction can range in intensity, and there are a variety of factors that can cause such a dysfunction, like traumatic brain injury, brain infection, tumors in and around the hypothalamus, aneurysms, the weight loss caused by eating disorders like bulimia and anorexia, brain surgery, and even radiation therapy or chemo. Conditions like multiple sclerosis and genetic disorders can also very well cause hypothalamic dysfunction. The symptoms for which are high and low blood pressure, dehydration or excessive water retention, weight loss or gain despite there being no changes in diet, infertility, poor bone health, delayed puberty, muscle loss, and insomnia. I want to take a moment here and talk about the hypothalamus and eating disorders. Now, we don't necessarily know for sure whether the hypothalamus plays an active role in causing an eating disorder because the general understanding follows the line of genetics and environmental factors. But there has been research done on how eating disorders affect the hypothalamus. Because EDs lead to malnutrition and starvation, which dysregulates a person's nervous system and throws their body into a frenzy, the hypothalamus naturally suffers to maintain homeostasis. The effects of which are that even after consistent feeding, the patients show a low level of glutamate. These low levels are associated with a decrease in the density of wiring in the arcuate nucleus and increased connectivity in the lateral hypothalamic area, which is involved in the regulation of food intake and energy balance. This suggests that the hypothalamus has been working harder than average to maintain homeostasis. Amenorrhea, not getting a period among AFAB individuals, is also seen, as well as osteoporosis, given the hypothalamus also helps with bone health. A specific area of the hypothalamus, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, or HPA, is shown to be a factor in patients with ADHD, and that's where most of the data points. The HPA is located right above the brainstem and it mainly controls our body's response to stress. It also regulates our mood, sexuality, and energy usage. Since patients with ADHD have trouble regulating their attention or their energy and show high levels of cortisol because of the stress that comes with executive dysfunction, this data suggests a connection between ADHD and the hypothalamus. And here are some of the other disorders that I found interesting. There's the hypopituitarism, which is a rare deficiency of one or more hormones made by the pituitary gland. The Prader-Willi syndrome, which is a genetic disease wherein a person does not receive the fullness cue and just does not know when to stop necessarily. And the Kalman syndrome, which is delayed or no puberty. And here are some fun facts that I found out about the hypothalamus. The literal interpretation of the word is underchamber, and it differs with biological sex, probably because of the different hormonal systems and the role oxytocin plays in AFAB individuals. And you can blame it for every fever you've ever had. I certainly do. It's our body's thermostat. And it is supposedly influenced by our sexual orientation because it responds to different smells distinctly, and smells do play a very notable role in sexual attraction. Well, that's all I have for you today. Thank you.